Reading 87 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Maurice Nicoll, Volume 2. Quarmid, Uglay, July 28, 1945. A Note on Recurrence. The work is the finest, the thinnest, the purest force that exists. It arranges everything in the right order. Do you remember how the work is defined in Hebrews, which is a Gnostic book? It is called the Logos, or the Word. Quote, "The Word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, and piercing even to the dividing of soul and spirit, of both joints and marrow, and quick to discern the thoughts and feelings of the heart." Hebrews 4, verse 12. All this means that nothing can be done wrongly without payment. Quoting from another source, it is said that the Vous, which is the mind of God, which is the Logos, or Word of God, quote, is infinite and self-ruled, end quote. We seek in the work to come under a discipline which has nothing to do with physical discipline, but is a mental and emotional discipline. And we are taught in this work that we have something buried in us called conscience, and that once we get a little free from our personality and all its tiresome manifestations and its tedious repetitions of the same thing, the same behavior, the same attitudes, the same phrases, we can begin to touch real conscience, which comes actually from higher centers. From this point of view, you must all understand that we have many accounts against us for wrong behavior, for wrong thinking, and above all, for wrong talking. Everything has to be worked out eventually. Now I will talk for a moment on the idea of recurrence. As you know, modern physics says that time is curved. This means that it is a circle. It is not an extended line, but a line that bends round on itself and comes back to the same place. For this reason, the work teaches in its secondary teaching that our lives are curved and come back to the moment of birth. This means that if nothing is changed in our lives, we shall once more enter the same circle, do the same things, feel the same things, and behave in the same way. But the work teaches that if we try to work on ourselves and change our being, next time we shall not have quite the same kind of life. But this depends on many things. For example, it depends on how we are brought up, on the influences acting on us from outside, from our parents, our nurses, from the literature of the day. You all know this strange phrase in the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. Quote, "I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the sins of the fathers upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generation of them that hate me." This means, practically, that if the parents change, the children can change. It means, in short, that if I am a parent and change during my circle of life, I will help my children. For this reason, there is much to hope for. If parents work and change their level of being, because if that happens, the children born again in recurrence will not have the same kind of parents because the parents have changed. For example, if I have a child who dies with the ordinary conception of time as a straight line leading from past to future, I shall not be able to see how I can change my child. Do you understand that no one can conceive what this means unless he or she understands about this circle of life and about the recurrence of things? If no one tries to change, whether child or parent, then everything will be the same and will go round and round in the same way. Do you imagine that I cannot change my father because he died many years ago? I assure you that from the esoteric standpoint, I can change my father if I overcome in myself certain things, and that my efforts will affect not only myself but my father. Now, this work can change many things in people, as some of you may have noticed. The more strongly you feel this work, and the more you conceive its meaning in your mind, and the more you make yourself distinct from mechanical life through the force of this work, then not only can you change yourself, but also everyone connected with you, even people long ago who are not in your present time. For this reason, the work teaches that time is one of the worst illusions that we can come under, as ordinarily conceived, because how can we help people a long way back? The answer is, by working on yourself now, you can change not only yourself, but everything, both in the past and in the future, because the future and the past equally exist. There is no past and no future if time is a circle. Now, some of our circles interconnect with other circles belonging to other people, and if you want to understand what recurrence means, you must understand that. Time is not a straight line, but infinite circles, all turning on themselves, and some intercommunicating with one another. The past is as living as the present or the future. From this grand conception, we can gain hope. We can understand that what we do now affects other people, both in the past and in the present, and in the future. Everything the work says is connected together, so that if a person works now on himself or herself and begins to change their level of being, they affect people not only in the past but in the future. Regret is useless, but work is always useful. You must remember, each one of you, that when you do a real act of work on yourself now, you change the past as well as the future, and you change your past in relation to all those people who were connected with you in the past. G once said, if you want to change yourself, you must change your grandfather. What does this mean? One meaning is that by changing your attitude to your father and to your grandfather, you will change them also, although apparently they are dead, and so when you are born once more in visible life on the circle of your own life, when you meet your father and your grandfather again, you will change them. Now, I do not wish to speak any more on this difficult subject of recurrence at present, but you must all remember that everything you do now in regard to work on yourself and changing yourself will reflect itself in a million ways both into the future and into the past. For this reason, we may have people who no longer exist in our time, but all people exist in time and constantly repeat their circles. In other words, there is no time as our senses conceive it, and everything is living, and everything is always present. Now let me add one thing. In the Old Testament, there are many ideas about recurrence. There is in Ecclesiastes the idea that time is not a straight line of past, present, and future, but a circle constantly recurring, constantly repeating itself. It is said, quote, that which hath been is that which shall be, and that which hath been done is that which shall be done. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 9. But you must remember, that which hath been shall be depends entirely on whether you work and not identify and separate from it, because then it has no power over you. Then you will change, and everything else will change in connection with you. Recently I was asked a question, what is the meaning of this? There are two futures, one in time and one in space. A future in time means that you are always just the same person, always saying the same things, always behaving as you ordinarily do. This future belongs to the level of being that you are actually at. It will always attract the same things. Your future in vertical scale means that you change your level of being and no longer identify so much with personality, with the person you have taken yourself to be. You will begin to change yourself. Then you rise vertically in the scale of being, and your future is then different. In terms of recurrence, instead of circling round the same life again and again in the same part of time, you do not do the same things because you remember. But it is a strange idea that we can change the future and the past. It is a strange idea that I can change my father. It takes a long time to understand this conception of time as bent, as circular, and not as a straight line. In Ecclesiastes it is said, quote, God seeketh again that which is passed away. Ecclesiastes 3:15. This means that what you think is over and done with is not over and done with, and the work says that you can change what was in the past by working on yourself now. I sometimes think that this means that you have to see the whole of your past as living, and that by working now, you can change the whole of the past and all that is connected with it. So you will agree with me that if you can catch this vision of something above the senses and the sensory mind, there is hope of an extraordinary kind. Note: in this paper, Dr. Nicoll refers to the ideas of time and recurrence, which are discussed by Mr. Ouspensky in A New Model of the Universe, Chapter 11.